The Nikon Z6 series has always played a special role in Nikon's mirrorless camera family. It's not the most expensive flagship, nor the most basic entry-level model. Instead, it has stood in the middle ground, carefully balancing features that appeal to both ambitious beginners ready to level up and working professionals who want a reliable second body. This in-between positioning has always been the strength of the Z6 line. Every new generation has carried the pressure of meeting high expectations without stepping too far into the premium flagship territory. The Nikon Z6 IV is no exception, but it carries even more weight than its predecessors, because the Z6 III set such a strong foundation. The last model in the series made huge waves when it launched. The price increase raised eyebrows at first, with many wondering if Nikon had stretched the Z6 line too far. But then, once creators got their hands on it, the improvements justified the cost. A new sensor, much faster burst shooting, and powerful video recording tools gave photographers and filmmakers alike a reason to believe Nikon was serious about reclaiming its position in the hybrid camera space. The Z6 III was no small update, it was a leap that elevated the whole series into a higher class. Now the Z6 IV arrives, and the question is simple yet heavy: how do you follow up a camera that already delivered so much? This is where Nikon finds itself today, navigating the line between meaningful progress and careful restraint, making sure not to overshadow other cameras in its lineup like the Z7, Z8, or Z9. At the heart of any camera lies the sensor. Nikon's decision in the previous model to go with a partially stacked 24-megapixel sensor was a brilliant move. It wasn't as expensive as the fully stacked sensors found in flagships, but it gave a noticeable performance boost. Autofocus became faster, rolling shutter was reduced, and continuous shooting felt more reliable. These little improvements added up to make the camera feel fast, modern, and competitive. That set a standard for what creators expect now, and the Z6 IV has to keep pushing that forward. Burst shooting has been a defining strength of this series. The Z6 III managed an impressive 14 frames per second with the mechanical shutter, which was already good enough for most action shooters. Switch to the electronic shutter, and you unlock 20 frames per second. JPEG shooters could even stretch it to 60 frames per second, and with a crop, an incredible 120 frames per second became possible. Very few mid-tier cameras offered that kind of speed flexibility. It meant that wildlife photographers, sports shooters, and anyone dealing with unpredictable motion had far more creative options. The Z6 IV is expected to keep this versatility, if not refine it even further. But speed alone doesn't make a modern hybrid camera. Video has become just as important. For years, Nikon lagged behind Sony and Canon in this space, which made many creators hesitate. But with the Z6 III, Nikon started to close the gap. Suddenly, filmmakers could record 6K RAW at 60 frames per second internally, capture 10-bit footage without needing external recorders, and even use professional tools like waveform monitors to properly judge exposure. These were not gimmicks, they were features serious creators had been asking for. The Z6 line was no longer just a photo-first tool with some video tacked on. It had matured into a true hybrid option. The autofocus improvements were another turning point. Nikon mirrorless cameras had long been criticized for inconsistent focus performance, especially in video. Earlier models would hunt, lose track of subjects, or fail to recognize eyes reliably. But with the Z6 III, things finally started to click. Eye tracking became dependable, subject recognition improved, and videographers no longer had to worry about critical moments being ruined by focus hunting. That change alone convinced many people to give Nikon another shot. Low-light performance has also been a key advantage. Clean images, solid autofocus even in dim lighting, and strong overall reliability made the Z6 III an event shooter's dream. Wedding photographers, concert shooters, and documentary filmmakers could work without constantly second-guessing whether their camera would keep up. That reputation for consistency is something the Z6 IV has to uphold. So, what can we expect from this new model? One of the biggest debates has been resolution. Some rumors suggested Nikon might introduce a dramatic 61-megapixel sensor, more than doubling the detail from the last model. For landscape, studio, and commercial photographers, that would be a dream. You could crop deeply while still keeping sharp details, opening new creative freedom. But such a move also risks blurring the lines with the Z7 and Z8, which are Nikon's higher resolution focused cameras. This tension defines much of the conversation around the Z6 IV. Nikon must decide how far to push without hurting its own lineup. Instead of committing to extreme resolution, some suggest Nikon may introduce a clever firmware-based pixel shift mode. With this, the camera could take multiple exposures and combine them into an ultra-high-resolution file, potentially 200 megapixels, when mounted on a tripod. That way, users would have the option of massive resolution without requiring the camera to always handle enormous file sizes. It's a balance between practicality and ambition. Video expectations are more straightforward. Nikon is likely to continue its progress with flexible recording modes. A full sensor readout at 4K 60 frames per second is expected, with crop modes enabling 120 frames per second slow motion. These specs might not eclipse the flagship Z8 or Z9, but they would still give hybrid creators more than enough to handle professional-level projects, YouTube content, and even independent films. Stabilization is another area where Nikon is rumored to be stepping up. The Z6 III was already solid, but the Z6 IV could push it to 6 stops of in-body image stabilization. That matters for handheld shooting in low light and for creators who don't want to always rely on tripods or gimbals. For travelers, vloggers, and documentarians, it translates directly into smoother, steadier results. Design is likely to stay familiar, rugged, weather-sealed, dependable. But refinements are expected. A sharper electronic viewfinder, a fully articulating screen for creators, and small usability tweaks could make a big difference. While some traditional still photographers dislike flip-out screens, content creators rely on them, and it's unlikely Nikon will abandon that flexibility in a camera aimed at hybrids. Price, as always, is a sticking point. Current projections suggest the Z6 IV could come in between $2,700 and $3,000. That places it above the Z6 III but still below the Z8. The increase would only feel justified if Nikon delivers meaningful upgrades. Otherwise, buyers may look to discounted older models, which could pose a risk. Another hot discussion revolves around card slots. Many professionals would love to see dual CFexpress Type B slots for maximum speed and reliability, but Nikon has consistently chosen a hybrid solution, one CFexpress Type B paired with one SD UHSI. This keeps costs lower while still offering flexibility. Pure professionals who demand maximum speed can stick with CFexpress, while others can use affordable SD cards. Expect Nikon to stay with this balance, reserving dual CFexpress for its flagships. Ultimately, the Nikon Z6 IV finds itself at a crossroads. On one hand, it follows the Z6 III, which was the first model to truly prove Nikon could compete again in the hybrid market. On the other hand, rumors and expectations have ballooned into a level where people want a mini Z9 at half the price. The reality will probably fall somewhere in between. For photographers dreaming of an all-powerful hybrid that outshines everything else, expectations may need to be tempered. But for the majority, those who need a camera that can shoot weddings one day, wildlife the next, YouTube content the following week, and even cinematic projects when the opportunity arises, the Z6 IV has every chance to become Nikon's most balanced and compelling mirrorless camera to date. In the end, it's not about being the best in one category. It's about being great across the board. That's the Z6 line's DNA, and if Nikon stays true to it, the Z6 IV could be the defining hybrid camera of its generation.